All right, welcome in the ring. Smash that emoji button. Share the live, folks. Partner with us as well. We got a different program in store for you, wonderful folks, tonight. Thanks for joining us from the many places you're joining us from. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good to see so many of you joining us already. Good to be here with all of you. We have German Griffith in the ring already. Good to have you on with us, German. Yep. We got a lot to discuss tonight. I got two guests. Wayne joining me. I got Tommy joining me. Godfrey. I got two guests joining me tonight, folks. We got a lot to discuss ahead of us. Daphne Joseph Lee, we see you there. Diane Fordyce, Tracy Clark, Karen McPherson, Bantu King is here. Winella Garnett, Jason McDonald. Guest joining us tonight, folks. We got a lot of discussion to get to. I'm happy that Dan Gravesandi is here. Barbara Ralph, Emily Durant is here. Emily, how's the foot, Emily? How's the foot? Cheryl Glenn is here, and Winella. I see Barbara Ralph is here too. All our favorite folks. Lynette Robin Kendall is here. Renwick Daly is here. Good to have each and every one of you tonight. Folks, we're talking about the economy. We're talking about the economy to the folks who know. We're talking about Ali going to Parliament on Thursday. Our expectation, if any at all. Share the live as you come on, folks. Smash that emoji button. We're fired up with our end, folks. We're ready to go. Estelle Griffith, Bantu King is here. Anne-Marie Selby is here too. Neville Kissoon, good to have you on the live tonight. Cecile and Claire Alexis Charmley Richmond. Good to see you too, Erwin Dawn and Cheryl Glenn. Great to have each and every one of you good folks on the live. Maud Oliver is here too. Great to have you, Maud, and all the other folks who are joining us. Great to see you. Folks, welcome. I am pleased to have with me this evening the treasurer of the People's National Congress Reform, the other party that I love. The treasurer of that party, he is also the economic advisor to the leader of the opposition, among other hats that he wears. I am privileged to have Mr. Elson Lowe with me tonight, folks. I'm going to have to go all this over back when he comes. I'm just giving you a preview. Sylvia Allen and Renwick and Cheryl Glenn. And folks, I'm going to leave my second guest as a surprise. You're going to want to stick around for the second guest as well. Michaela Andrew Coates. Yep, Yanet is here. Etwa, good to have you here. Lakshmin Aziz. Where is Jamal? Marilyn Thomas. Good to have you on the live. You know, my first guest, as I said, Elson Lowe. He is going to break it down for us. He's going to unpack what's been happening there in the economy. And based on this Bank of Guyana report, mid-year report, half-year report, the Bank of Guyana half-year report, the official title of it, we're going to be talking about that, folks. Economics, we're going to be talking about the politics, the National Assembly, what's happening. Arfan Ali is coming to the National Assembly on Thursday. We're going to be talking about that too. I'm going to leave my second guest, good folks, as a surprise. We don't have any time to lose, good folks. We don't have any time to waste tonight. This is the opener. It is everything all in one. As we begin our broadcast, we're mixing it up tonight, folks. We are mixing it up tonight. So don't look for the usual, folks. The one and only, folks, I'm privileged and pleased to have with me, my friend, my brother from another mother. Please and thank you. Folks, we are privileged to have joining us the one and only economist, Elson Lowe. Of course, you know Elson is from the People's National Congress Reform, recently elected as the treasurer there, and also wears the hat of the oil and gas spokesperson for the PNCR, and also advises the leader of the opposition on all things to do with the economy and economics. Elson, welcome again to our broadcast.
Always good to be on. Happy to have a chat.
Excellent. I am hopeful that by now you've had a look at the Bank of Guyana half-year report. That's what we're going to talk about this evening. Again, thanks for joining us. Give us a broad view of perhaps your first, second reading of this half-year report?
Yes, absolutely. Well, the government has been highlighting the top line number of nearly 50% growth in that first half of the year, as well as at least 16% growth in the non oil sector. Those are the numbers that they're putting out there. They're also highlighting that there's continued growth in the construction industry and so on and so forth, which of course you would expect with their infrastructure push. They've mentioned, which I think a lot of citizens have paid close attention to, the inflation rate in the country. We've seen 1.6% inflation there already at the half year mark. I think, especially with regard to food, you're seeing inflation. And the full year estimate is for inflation is going to be 3.2%. What I want to do, though, is to add a little bit of a context to these statistics, because what we've got in Guyana is a serious contention over the nature of government statistics and the publishing of the statistics. To start off with inflation, you've seen the government say that there's going to be 2.5% inflation this year, and we're on track for 3.2%. So they've been off. But last year, they were significantly off, saying that they expected to see 2% inflation, whereas I calculated at the beginning of the year an expectation of 7% inflation. And then the U.S. government put out
So, for all intents and purposes, Elton, these are very, very conservative numbers that we're seeing in the half-year report. 1.6 at the end of June.
I take it further. I'd say that these are very misleading numbers. Very
Misleading numbers. And I wanted to remind viewers too that when the Abnu AFC left office, I might be off, but I think inflation was 0.9 on the Winston Jordan. What does inflation mean to the common man as you make your remarks?
Absolutely. So inflation is just the increase in prices as time goes on. And what you've seen in Guyana, sad to say, is you've seen a very sharp, since the COVID-19 crisis, you've seen very sharp increases in inflation that the government has not been able to deal with properly. Of course, part of that is due to the rise in oil prices, as well as supply chain holdups that have caused prices to rise across the world. One thing we want to make clear, though, is that when the oil price is high and you see inflation and high prices, it also means that Guyana is getting significantly more oil resources because of the high oil price. And so in 2021, as an example, the country made an additional 300 million US, more than we expected, just due to that high oil price. So really what you've noted, or what has come to the fore, is that the government is having a lot of trouble, or deliberately not producing inflationary numbers in terms of the increase in the price of goods, numbers in terms of the increase in the price of food, that are good numbers, that are reliable numbers. So this number, I think, does not even reflect the way people feel in the streets. And people are already saying, oh my God, inflation is going to be another 3.2% this year is going to be terrible. Given that we've had so much inflation over the years, we've had such a cost of living crisis for so long. That's part A of this. I would say the other side of this is the government asks us to look at these numbers in isolation from looking at the effect of the numbers. It's not enough to say that you're growing at 50% per annum, or your non-oil economy is growing. It's not enough to say that. We have to look at measures like the unemployment rate, because it could be that you're growing, but it is because of one or two companies, which is of course the case, right? It's Exxon that's driving a lot of this growth through the oil industry, and it could be that you're growing in specific sectors, but people are not being employed, which is of course a complaint across Guyana. And now, when we look at the data here, the last unemployment really report was a couple of years ago. So the government has not been publishing an unemployment report, which is a normal report that every country publishes, for several years. Now, if you had a good number to report, if things were going great, if people were being employed, you would expect the government to publish the number. So this has led many people to be suspicious that you've got a lot of unemployment in Guyana, with money being concentrated in the hands of friends, family, and favorites. And the government is trying to hide that by not publishing the unemployment numbers. So yes, there's growth on one end, but we don't know the effect of that growth. And unfortunately, if you drive around Guyana, you'll see a lot of people without work on the side of the road. You'll see a lot of people that are seem to be finding it difficult to find a job. Lots of young people continue to complain about being unable to find a job. This is all one of the real concerns. One of the other things that we're looking at, which is another effect of the oil and gas industry the government is not appropriately dealing with, is the effect on the production of gold. We've seen a decline in gold, and this report again highlights a 10% decline over the same period last year in gold production. But of course, in this period, we've got a major gold miner that has come online, a foreign miner, which is accounting for a large chunk of the gold. What does that mean? It means that we've had a very severe decline in small miners' production of gold. Now, that is again an employer, and the government says that miners are heading to the oil and gas industry and not involving themselves in the gold industry. But really, it is again the government's responsibility to ensure people are properly trained, to ensure people can make a living wage in these other industries,
Correct,
by
correct, correct.
providing the right support in the gold industry. And so the consequence of them not providing that support has been that workers have left and have gone to the oil industry. That is a classic form of Dutch disease, and it is extremely alarming that our gold industry, which we've relied on for so long for foreign currency, is in decline. It means that our foreign currency reserves are in decline as a result of that.
So are we correct? Are we correct with this big figure? For instance, that in the medium scale minus category, there's been a decline by 24.8% in this.
Well, there you go. Absolutely. And what I'm saying is alarming is that our non-oil foreign currency earners, like gold, that we rely on to be able to import everyday goods that consumers will purchase. If they're in decline, it's going to mean you're going to have a foreign currency shortage because you're not bringing in the foreign currency that you would normally expect to bring in, while at the same time there's money being spent in the economy that generates demand. That means that you're gonna have a foreign exchange shortage, and that shortage will send the prices even more because then people have to go to the black market, go to cambios that will charge them a higher rate than the official government rate of 208, which is mentioned again in this report. And Guyanese will tell you the last time you got 208. I mean, it's very difficult to find 208 exchange rate in Guyana. It's more like 220, 225. That's what you
Yeah,
find.
yeah.
And so that price increase is passed on to consumers. So the result of this decline in the gold industry, and I'll talk about the sugar industry as well, the result of that decline is that it is now more expensive for consumers to purchase goods that are imported. That has led to an increase in the cost of living crisis, a decrease in the cost of living. Similarly, we've seen with sugar very sharp decline. I believe it's again 60% decline over the same period last year in terms of production. Now, if you don't produce sugar, you don't sell it abroad, you're not going to get foreign currency to be able to use to import other items, whether it is food stuff and so on. And that means that you again will have this shortage of, in the non-oil economy, this shortage of foreign exchange. That is all part of why you've got this real black market for foreign exchange in the country.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, that's the
On,
first thing.
on the note of sugar, why, in your estimation, is the half-year report silent on a figure for sugar? They just said it was a decline, while the mid-year report for the finance ministry gave a big figure there, as you mentioned. Why is that? Is it that is it even going high? Is it they're ashamed of this industry that they were supposed to turning around, and because they were the czars for sugar and all of that?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head in that the hiding of these figures across the board seems to need to be as a result of an embarrassment about the figures. Because if you had good figures in sugar, you'd want to highlight it front page. If you had good unemployment figures, you'd want to highlight it front page. Why would you hide these things? Similarly, you don't hear them calculate any poverty statistics, right? When's the last time you heard some poverty statistics? That's because they're trying to hide these numbers, which are alarming numbers. Now, as it concerns sugar, you've seen a significant decline. You've not seen this government produce sugar at the levels that we, the APNU, AFC, were able to produce sugar for many years. And I would say that has led to a lot of economic insecurity among sugar workers who don't know what direction the industry is going to go into. What I would say is that It is first of all important that we highlight that sugar workers will have a role in Guyana's economy, but also that Gaisuco really needs to be diversified. One of the things that we've recently spoken about is the provision of free fertilizer based off of natural gas as that comes to shore. And that will allow us to diversify many different elements of Gaisuko to produce other crops at an efficient rate. Now, that is half of the story, man. The other half of the story is we don't see sugar workers only as people who are not productive assets, not productive members of the society, which is where the PPP kind of treats them as a last thought. They get them a few billion there to quiet them. If there's a protest, you get them some money. We want to see Gaisuko revitalized so that sugar workers can make more money, can contribute as much as it's possible for them to contribute, and so that they can live a comfortable life. There's no reason that they should be left behind as Ghana's economy grows. And so that is why we believe that that innovations and initiatives like free fertilizer will help to revitalize Gaisuko and diversify it. So that is an area where it is crystal clear that our governance in the sugar industry is far superior and going forward will be much better than the PPP's approach.
Yeah, yeah. As we're in this point of the discussion, you mentioned it earlier, but I wanted to come to it frontally. We see a large number there in terms of the mid-year report, the contribution of oil and gas to the economy. I think it's 47 point something there. You did mention that oil and gas even is indirectly fueling the non-oil sector in this economy. That gives you that other large number, quote unquote, I think 14 or something percent growth. They talk to us about that because when people see this big number here contributed to oil and gas, and then they see the non-oil sector looking like it's flourishing, it's coming from oil and gas too.
Yeah, well, what happens is that there are a lot of related sectors. As an example, in the island, you'll see a lot of people buying, selling, producing, servicing ACs that you would not have seen that kind of demand for air conditioning without the oil and gas sector. Production of food, where people in the oil and gas sector are eating certain foods. You wouldn't have seen that without the oil and gas sector. In fact, the rise in the price of things like celery and so on, I think is largely attributed to the oil and gas sector because the consumption of celery is disproportionate amongst people who are foreign folks who would be more accustomed to that as being a core element of many dishes that they would eat. You've also seen a question around chicken, whether a lot of chicken has been consumed by people in that sector. So really, that has had a big influence on the non-oil economy's growth. But I would still caution about the figure that they're putting forward because I'll tell you this: if your inflation number really is 7% and you are saying that it is 3% or 2%, you're supposed to be adjusting your non-oil economy number by your inflation number. If you're making the wrong adjustment, then it might not be 16% or something. It might be 9%, it might be 8%, because you're not making the right adjustment. So I don't give them I don't take those numbers just like that. I think you have to take them with a grain of salt, recognizing that it could be that this is just a fictitious number that they're putting out there, and that many of the numbers that you need in order to be able to properly assess what's going on are being hidden.
Yeah, we know that one of the things the uh, president is coming to talk to the National Assembly about. We seem to have lost Elson here for a second. One of the things the president is coming to Elson, we are recording, so you can finish that thought, and then I can come.
Yes, I'm here. I see that you had there that food prices have gone up like 3.2% at the half year mark, which means they're expected to continue to go up. Now, it is, first of all, troubling when it comes to the impact on low-income workers because low-income workers spend a disproportionate amount of their income on food. That's one of their major expenses, whereas if you're higher income, food is a much smaller share of your expenses. So that has particularly made it difficult for low-income workers. And in fact, you could argue that there's been an increase in poverty in Guyana because of this cost of living crisis and because there's a concentration of the jobs and the wealth in the friends, family, and favorites of the PUP. That means that people have not had their incomes rise enough to be able to deal with the cost of living crisis. And that is one of the things that we're really concerned about. So, as much as we're seeing numbers that might be fictitious, we're not seeing the numbers that would tell a clearer story as to whether or not people are making progress in their lives. Rather, those numbers are being hidden. And it is likely that because of this cost of living crisis, the numbers are very bad, poverty and unemployment numbers.
Yeah, yeah. And we're being told that the president, as I said, is coming to address the National Assembly on Thursday. Is it this what he's coming to tell us? That that 3.2 we saw there, rising food prices, they said that's going to continue to the end of the year. I wanted to walk you through some of this very quickly and have you comment on it. We spoke about this, sugar, the decline in sugar. We got gold, diamond, declarations down 23.9%. We got bauxite is down as well based on the Bank of Guyana half-year report. Livestock has declined there. I mean, what is Ali coming to tell us? We spoke about inflation there and where it's at and where it's going by the end of the year, and then we got the food prices there. Where are we in this economy that's supposed to be so transformational under the ear of the government as against what is proposed by the PNCR, for instance, the
Well,
People Center.
one of the things we want to remind Guyanese about is this. It is not uncommon for an oil-rich country to have a booming economy and very poor citizens. That is typical. And in fact, right across the Atlantic in Equatorial Guinea, you've got a country where you've got 75% of people living in poverty. And at one time, they had a GDP per capita adjusting for prices higher than Spain. Now, right now, Guyana's GDP per capita, when you adjust for prices, is almost as high as the United States' GDP per capita. That's what we're looking at, 80,000 USD per person.
Mhm.
Now, what is similar between us and Equatorial Guinea, and which is why we really protest the way the PB is governing the country, is that Equatorial Guinea has 75%, I think this is according to the Bargain Project, has 75% of its budget spent on infrastructure. We in Guyana moved from having infrastructure being, let's say, 40% of the budget, to being 50% of the budget, to now nearly being 60% of the budget. And it seems like we're heading towards an Equatorial Guinea scenario where you've got 75% of the budget is infrastructure, widespread poverty, widespread inequality, and a high GDP per capita. That is a nightmare
Widespread corruption.
scenario. And high corruption. Well, the reason that there's so much spent on infrastructure is because that is the mechanism through which the corruption happens. And so it would be not it would be sad but not surprising if we continued on this path with the PPP here over the course of the next year until at least the election. That might be Ali might be coming to sugarcoat some of what is going on, but sadly that really is the scenario. And so it's not a shock to me at all that you've got high levels of poverty and a high cost of living crisis that's not being dealt with. But one of the things that we need to really stress to citizens, and this is where the I think the opposition is clear in its mind, is that there are things that can be done to deal with the cost of living crisis. I mentioned to you that we earned an additional $300 million in 2021 that we didn't even expect because of the war in Ukraine, which shot prices up for a prolonged period. That money needs to be distributed to provide relief to families. That's like $100,000 per household or something to that effect. Very significant amounts of money that can provide relief. That's number one. Number two is we need to give our farmers grants to buy equipment so that they can produce more efficiently. And number three is, and this is going forward, we need to look at the provision of free fertilizer to lower the cost of food. We believe that will lower the cost of food by as much as 30%. Going forward. So that is going to be a major push once we're in office. We'll conduct the requisite studies to ensure we have the right things in place. And we'll look to have that push. The government doesn't like to conduct studies when it does stuff. So it ends up in all sorts of quandaries. One of the main quandaries right now is they're promising Guyanese there'll be jobs at the Wales gas energy plant, and everything will go well with that plant. It'll be up and running in time for the election. But they didn't conduct a proper study, it would seem, on the soil that was needed for a major industrial park, which is going to have lots of heavy-duty equipment, like the gas turbines to produce electricity, like manufacturing equipment, like fertilizer plant equipment. They didn't conduct that, or at least it doesn't seem like they conducted that.
It was a no-brainer to them.
It was a no-brainer. And in fact, Jagdo went out of his way to say that he didn't put the factory, the pipeline to Palmyra because it's swampy soil. But I don't know if your viewers have ever been to Wales, but it is extremely swampy soil in Wales. So I don't know what he was talking about. Therefore, that project is much delayed. It's been delayed, I think, almost like 9 months by the soil. And any project that's going to be built there, they're looking to build another gas plant, will be delayed again by like 9.9 months by the soil, because you have to remediate the soil. You have to keep building up the soil. It's a huge amount of sand and loam that they have to bring in there in order to facilitate it. A massive amount. It's like a small mountain made of sand and loam. That's going to have to be the case for all the projects. So we will conduct studies, but one of the things that we are focused on is ensuring that we can provide free fertilizer or very cheap fertilizer to farmers, because that will lower the cost of living going forward. For right now, though, we need to make use of the windfall of the additional monies we've gotten due to the high oil price, the unexpectedly high oil price, to provide relief. And we also, one of the things we also think is useful is that those canters and trucks that are bringing goods from the market, from the farm to the market, that we should provide them with vouchers so that they can get cheaper fuel. That is something where we can target specifically some of the costs behind local produce, and therefore bring down these prices. It is just tragic that the government, with all this abundance, making hundreds of millions of US a month, not put that money to work in terms of bringing down the cost of food. Instead, you're seeing numbers, inflation numbers go up and up. And they are saying, oh, 2%, 2.5%, but instead it's 6, 7%, and then 3% again. And, this thing is continuing to roll on because they're not intervening.
Yeah, 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 yeah. We did say that if Fernandez will be addressing the National Assembly on Thursday, um, there's talk that there's lots of idle money in the economy because they haven't been able to spend all the money they appropriate from National Assembly. So you might have some massive giveaways on Thursday. Christmas could be coming in October. Any thoughts of what might be said? I mean, it's hard to actually get into Ali's head.
Well, what I would say is what we continue to say is problematic and needs to be addressed is, as you mentioned, the government is not able to spend all of these monies. Now, what we need to do is to reform our procurement system, to bring in international consultants, and to follow recommendations of the IMF and other organizations to help us to better manage these things, to spend more efficiently, to spend more, and to be able to deliver to Guyanese the quality of works that they should be seeing. Rather, you got a government which is doing slapdash work all over the place. I mean, a couple weeks after the road is finished, it starts to fall apart. That's a typical
Yeah,
thing in Guyana
yeah,
now. And
yeah.
I tell
Schooner
you,
has been iconic in that regard. Schooner to create public good. Yeah.
exactly. One in front of Prashad Nagar as well. There's roads running along there that they recently built. That road has started to collapse, and you're starting to see bits of it. Prashad Nagar, Lama Gardens, that entire stretch, you're starting to see it sink into the trench and so on. And I mean, I don't know about you, but it seems to me that even under the last PVP, the roads used to last longer than these roads. These roads last literally 2 weeks. But the downside of that is that it means that you're gonna have to go and rebuild these roads, and that's expensive, as well as time consuming, because those construction workers, instead of having to rebuild roads, could have been building other roads. So
Yeah.
that is one of the
You
reasons.
don't see here is where the corruption is in these
That's
infrastructural
that's
projects.
exactly where it is. That's exactly where it is. And in fact, the IMF had indicated that as much as 41 cents out of every dollar spent is being lost due to incompetence, corruption, these types of things. No, when I always tell the joke, when I heard that number, my first thought was to shut down the government and give back the taxpayers the money, because from every dollar you spend, you lose 41 cents. I mean, that's insane, and it's worse than every other Caribbean country, or the average Caribbean country is worse than the average developing country. That's an unbelievable level of waste and corruption. But the result of that is that you've got the Thomas Lands Road, which runs next to QC, that has been rebuilt like 4 or 5 times in another
Correct. Correct.
Grove
Correct.
stretch, which has been rebuilt 3, 4 times. I was arguing with somebody. No, it only rebuilt 2 times. And when they say, oh shoot, it's 3 times it rebuilt. I mean, yeah. So the consequence of this,
Ludicrous. Yeah.
money being spent inefficiently and in a corrupt way, and on the flip side, that money not being spent to deal with the cost of living crisis. So these two things are directly connected. The money is being siphoned off rather than being put to use. I mean, it is baffling to me that you can have a country where your national budget tripled in no time, tripled in only a few years, and just struggling with a cost of living crisis where people can barely get by and catch their breath.
Yeah,
There's clearly
yeah,
money being spent, right? The money is
yeah,
obviously being
yeah,
spent,
yeah.
but it's being
And
spent on the cost of living crisis.
Elson, let's close on that note because I heard you say it before, and and correct me if I get the phrasing wrong. I think you said in the last few years, the last 2 or 3 years, we've spent the equivalent of the last 10 years in budgets. If that's the case, why people in this country are hurting so bad economically? You know, there's a cash handout right now in I think in New Amsterdam, and there are almost thousands of people there tripping over each other
Yeah.
because people are hurting economically in this country with its transformational leadership of Irfan Ali and Bharat Jagdio. You know, where all this money going?
Well, between last year and this year's budgets, you've got the equivalent of from 2010 to 2019's budgets combined. All those budgets in just 2 years. How it's difficult to not improve people's lives when you're spending money at that rate. It's almost like you gotta go to your way not to improve
Yes.
people's lives.
Yeah.
You know, but that is what we're looking at here. How can you have a cost of living crisis of people struggling when you're piling on these huge sums? You're talking about $1 trillion budget when the budget was only 200 and something billion not too long ago. Eh? So that is to me a tragedy. But the other side of it is when you hear the government continue to push back the date by which people will get proper salaries 2027, 2028, or 2030. As I said, this seems to me to be following the path of Equatorial Guinea and other very corrupt countries where the vast majority, 75% of the money is spent on infrastructure. And you're not seeing people pulled out of poverty. This is the clear trajectory. And on top of that, they're draining the sovereign wealth fund. They've changed the rules so they can withdraw nearly all the money from it to spend in this way. This is tragic. It is typical of oil economies that go awry. And we really need to continue to educate Guyanese about this and continue to get them to press, one, to resist this governance approach, and two, to make sure that they put their votes where it matters when it comes, when the time comes next year. Otherwise, I'm telling you, you're going to be sitting in this situation for a long, long time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I hope they put their vote on the side of a people-centered leadership, a people-centered government that can do much better than obtains currently. Elson, I want to thank you so much. The economic advisor, the leader of the opposition, you're wearing the hat of also oil and gas spokesperson, and also you're the treasurer for the People's National Congress Reform. I think no, none of those tasks your shoulder cannot bear. Thank you, your shoulders. Thank you so much, Elson. Have
Thank you for having me on, and it's always
a
good
great
to
evening.
Bye.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Welcome back, folks. Thank you so much for sticking with us. For coming by and for elucidating on those issues for us. We got to understand this issue of our economy, how it's working, how it's not working, thanks to these guys. And we have young, brilliant Elson Lowe, always in these issues, study these things and understand it like few other persons do. That's one of the reasons why the PVP dislikes him so much, because they believe they are the only ones, should have this kind of knowledge and be able to guide people. Yeah, 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 yeah. Welcome back to all of you. It's a different kind of program. I did promise you that I have a second guest, so you're not going to be disappointed in. Folks, I am privileged. Privileged. You all know I extra. You all share the line, smash the emoji, but you all know I extra. I'm privileged, privileged, privileged. Privileged to have with me this evening, folks, the one and only, the leader of the opposition, just back from, I think it's Canada, among other places, meeting with Guyanese, pressing the case of why a people-centered government is the best choice, a people-centered governance is a better choice than what we see obtaining here. I am privileged to have with me the one and only Mr. Aubrey Campton Norton. Recognize Mr. Norton, welcome to this evening's broadcast. I know you've been traveling. You're coming back from overseas. You've been making the rounds, talking with Guyanese, giving them a sense of what's happening back home. And you're coming back into the reconvening of the National Assembly after this recess. Talk to us a little bit about your trip overseas, some of the other things you've been talking to Guyanese about in the diaspora, and then we'll talk about this reconvening of the National Assembly and inter parliament, which we did for all
One
of
of
them.
the most important things I recognize is that Guyanese overseas are listening a lot. They are following all our programs and they are well aware of what is happening. The Guyanese community is very well disposed to supporting us in the next general and regional elections, and they are prepared as far as to help where they can, even by their presence. So overall, it has been a good visit. This last one was to Canada. Before I was in the United States, every program we had sold out crowds. Importantly,
Excellent.
importantly in Canada, we had not just a sold out crowd, but we had a crowd that had ethnic balance. There were a lot of Indo-Guyanese as well as Afro-Guyanese. So for me, it was a very successful visit. I think the visit is so successful that it sent Barrett Jackdo criticizing anything that they could find.
Correct, correct. You've talked first there about some of what you've been talking to Guyanese in the diaspora about. What have Guyanese been talking to you about?
One
on
thing
their
all the way,
minds?
one thing all the way, we need to see the back of the PPP. Everywhere you go, at a distance, the corruption is so obvious. Wherever you go, the call is for you to do whatever is necessary to get rid of the People's Progressive Party. That is the main point about all the visits.
Yeah, and as you often say, for Guyana to grow, the PPP
Must
must go.
Yeah.
Irfan Ali is going to Parliament on Thursday. I think this is the second time since 2020 they came to power. He is addressed or seeking to address the National Assembly. I don't think anybody can remember what he said the last time. It is always so uninspiring. What is your sense that's bringing what's bringing the president to the National Assembly?
I think the fact that elections are coming and they are in deep trouble, they want to come to the parliament. We have got to be very blunt about what has happened. The PPP has refused to consult with an opposition that has 49% of the support. That in itself is a pass. And so him coming to the National Assembly doesn't mean much to us because he doesn't consult and he doesn't listen. That's first thing. Secondly, I gain the impression he's coming to deal with cost of living and the Ghana situation. Well, there are a number of things he will have to do before he can be taken seriously. Now, one of the first things he will have to do is to come with a strategy to reduce wastage and corruption. Right now, any talk about putting resources in the hands of the Guyanese people will demand a reduction in corruption and a reduction in wastage, which I don't think he can do because they are the architects of the corruption and wastage. So to me, whatever he comes and he says, he will fall short because the very nature of the regime does not allow them to transcend the critical problems that face us, like governance. They cannot be involved in good governance. By their nature, they have to be discriminatory. By their nature, they have to be corrupt. And so I don't see how they will come with proposals that will deal with this question of wastage and corruption. Then he will also have to deal with the depoliticization of the Guyana police force. To the extent that the PPP has corrupted the Guyana police force, to the extent that the PPP has politicized the Guyana police force, any serious talk about bringing relief to the people of Guyana must include a depoliticization of the police force. And if you're going to appoint a commissioner, you have to investigate those that are there now before you can talk anything about appointing a commissioner and deputy, or else you will merely be showing that you are complicit in corruption and you are prepared to continue in the same way. So if he doesn't address that, his speech cannot make sense because one of the critical issues facing Guyana is the lack of proper law enforcement in keeping with the laws of Guyana. And if he doesn't speak to this question, then I don't see how is it we can listen to him. How is it we can listen to him if he doesn't address the fact that you have taken away lands from the people of Makkah and poor people across this country, not by just a letter, but by a bulldozer, by dragline. You have physically destroyed the people in Mocha. So if you come in now, you have to come and tell us about restitution for those ills, because you have committed a number of ills in this society. And we sense that they are coming to speak to these issues now because there's an internal battle in the PPP. Jagdo is worried that Irfan's corruption team is doing better at corruption than them. And so you had Jagdo flying out talking about dealing with corruption. No, you have to deal with corruption generally. The question of whether Irfan is more corrupt than you, it doesn't matter, because both of you affect the people of Guyana. And so we in the opposition will observe that unless they can deal with this issue, then again, we have to confront the PPP. And now you have a number of local democratic organs in which the people elected the APNU in the last elections. And in the general and regional elections, the APNU AFC, you were starving Linden of resources. You were starving New Amsterdam of resources. You were starving Georgetown of resources. When we were totally in charge, you were starving Bartica. You were starving Adia. Now you're giving resources to those areas, and you continue to starve those that are controlled by the APNU. So don't tell us you have Guyanese at heart. You don't. What you do is you are politicking. One good step in his speech would be to say how much resources will be allocated to the regions won by the APNU. And then he must not only do that, he must allow them to identify the REO and overseers, because you can even put the resources. But if you continue to control the REOs, the overseers, the town clerk like you're doing in Linden, then you can't be speaking to us, because you already put the machinery in place for control and domination. And if you're going to deal with the issues, you have to break down that barrier, that insidious machinery that you have put there. And so you have to come much better than that and allocate the resources. And then you have to end this nationwide, what I call this nationwide crisis of corruption and discrimination. What can he say? What could he come and say to deal with the incompetence? The only thing that could deal with this incompetence is a change of government. Nothing that he says will cause Edgil to run projects better. Nothing that he says will ensure that $7 billion in contracts, $7 billion in contracts do not go to a friend of Barry Jackdew. These are the critical issues that are affecting Guyana. Guyana is being badly governed. You took over a GPL that was on the move. You put us where we are a blackout nation, even to the point of affecting our cricket. So what I'm saying here is this. We are not prepared to go in parliament and listen to Irfan Ali talking garbage. We might go in there, but if we go in there, we can sorry, because we ain't gonna behave ourselves. But there are many of these issues that have to be addressed, or else the government isn't making any sense.
Correct. So I want to get to the cost of living, the high cost of living, which is the main area he's coming to address. 4 years later, this transformational governance they keep talking about. But I want to circle back to some of the things you spoke to earlier. For instance, the appointment of a substantive commissioner of police. You've already been on record as saying in the past, for instance, where the Chief Justice is concerned, the Chancellor, you are for the current office holders. You will support the president in that regard. That has happened long before Hickins started acting. And Irfan kept saying he's going to come to that, for instance, when he appoints the Judicial Service Commission. That has been appointed. We're still waiting. Now he is going at breakneck speed to appoint Hickins. I think Demways reporting on this matter saying that a human resource specialist says he cannot be appointed as a substantive commissioner because he's past the retirement age. Where is he going with this, Mr. Norton?
He is void of common sense. They're accustomed to domination and control. And so reason doesn't come in. Any rational person will know if you have a police force in which a man would have retired and you give him an extension, you are extending him as an acting commissioner. You cannot proceed to make him the substantive commissioner. Apart from the fact that I've made it very clear that he's neither certified or qualified to be the police commissioner. But you must understand, if they put a police commissioner that isn't equipped for the job, then there are the swords of Damocles over his head and they'd be able to control him. If you put a commissioner in which there are serious allegations of corruption against he and some of the top ranking person, then you will have a police force that can't enforce the law. And so for them, it is not the rule of law. That is the other thing he should do. He should give a clear indication of the things that he will do by the rule of law. We speak to the Chief Justice. Yes, he did say once they appoint the judiciary, they will move ahead and appoint the Chancellor and Chief Justice. But he wants certain people out. They want a judiciary that they are totally in control of. And that is what is preventing the confirmation of the two young ladies. And he cannot say it is political because many occasions there were rulings that weren't, I would say, favorable to us.
Correct.
But we live with it. There are many rulings that aren't favorable to citizens. They live with it as part of law. But that is not the PPP. Look at how Jagdio virtually cursed out Kisoon for a decision he made in the interests of the people of Guyana. These people, this is an election gimmick. Remember, Jagdio expressed concern about how corruption will affect them. I think what they're trying to do is in the couple months that are left of their tenure to try and appear to be people serving the people of Guyana. But the people of Guyana have had 4 years of them already. And they know full well that he can say whatever he wants to say now. If you didn't do it in 4 years, why we believe you could do it in 1 year and be sincere?
Yeah,
And the problem here is the absence of sincerity. They are
on that very note of sincerity in tackling corruption head on, this has been imprinted in the DNA of the PPP. In the last press conference of the vice president that focuses on what you are doing and your press conferences, that's the nature of the press conference. You don't get anything else out of it. It's all about what Norton is doing, where Norton is going, what he's wearing, how he dances, and all of that stuff. He says that they found an engineer in Region 8 who was double dipping. He was an engineer in the region and yet competing for contracts too. And he said this is a conflict of interest, it's corruption. But he preferred to say that the engineer has to make a choice, up to the engineer, which area he wants to function in, whether he wants to be a contractor or the engineer. It's left up to him. But we were made to understand that the contract has already been executed. The man has gone with his 40 million and the man is still on the job. Is that the kind of way Jagdio wants to tackle corruption, like him and two in the living room and so on?
That is the nature of Jagdio. He recognizes that it's already a fait accompli. If you know the concept of a fait accompli, when it is done and it is done, you have to live with it. So if he comes now and make these pronouncements to some of his supporters, he sounds as if he's tackling corruption. But the reality is known that he isn't, because the person is already paid. If he wants to tackle corruption, let him deal with the fact that his friend got $7 billion in contracts for pharmaceuticals, etc. Then you will say, because I am there, sure the engineering carry away 100 million. No way close. But you have in this system people who are incompetent, they are given contracts, the government comes, end the contract, and then got to get a new set of people more money because of what would have happened. And they know full well that it's corruption. They are involved in unparalleled corruption.
Yeah.
They have
And
been
case
the
in
most
point, you
corrupt.
have Sabagnews pointed out just over the last 24 hours, the Port Drawing Pump Station stalled because of the similar kind of practices. The Tupui Pump Station, that's the Bellevue Pump Station, just up the road, same fate. And you can name project after project after project after project.
Correct.
For instance, the Carifessa Avenue that had to been done over about 5 times.
So why he
And
didn't
currently
say,
being done over again.
why didn't he say Edgil or Ashney should choose? Can't say that because they are part and complicit in all the allegations of corruption in this country. So we are saying to the people of Ghana, don't be carried away by this so-called address to parliament. There are many things that have been said outside the parliament and inside the parliament that were not honored. Is it not the same regime that said when they lost power, they want a clean voters list and biometrics? Now they are singing a different song. When they were seeking power, they were talking about petroleum commission. Oh, and you couldn't run it without the petroleum commission. Now they are saying no to a petroleum commission.
It's going to hamper the pace at which they're moving, they say.
Which they are moving. That kind of stupidity. They're not even prepared to do proper feasibility study. Jagdo is so barren in thought that he seeks to make the fact that you do feasibility study a problem. Oh, the APNU is only about feasibility and feasibility. Yes, there must be feasibility because you did none for Skeldon and it is in trouble. You did none for the packaging factory, it is in trouble. You did none for fiber optic cable. We waste billions of dollars. And so these people are not prepared to govern Ghana in a sensible way. They govern Ghana so that their families, their friends, and their favorites can benefit. Overall, oil resources are not meeting the people of Guyana. We have been saying at the parliamentary level, and even outside of that, the WPA has been saying, let us give a $1 million transfer to the people of Guyana in a direct way to each household. They don't want to do that. And then if they do that, based on their track record, you will know it is going to be discriminatory. Because every cash grant they have delivered has been discriminatory in nature.
Some slips waiting, leader of the opposition. Some people still got some pink slips.
Some of them, must he change the color, must he light pink. They got them so long. So nobody should take Irfan Ali and Jack Doe seriously.
Just before I head back into the issue of the high cost of living, and Irfan Ali addressing the National Assembly on Thursday, another issue that he talked about, you raised, the attitude of the government towards local government bodies that they do not control. On the eve of the last local government election, Jack Joe was at pains to say, win or lose, they're going to work with all of these municipalities, NDCs, even if they don't win them. But we haven't seen them. How can we take Ali serious?
We won them, and he refuses to work with them. What they're doing is identifying selective people who they think they can control in local government institutions and try and relate to them to appear to create division in the opposition one and to appear to be working with the people. But let's look at Linden. You promised to work, but you appoint Tom Clark, who lost in the local government election. And the very fact that he participated in the local government election should make him political and not qualified to be Tom Clark. But the government makes him the Tom Clark and then proceeds to use him as the Tom Clark to undermine the work of region. Yes. The same is true about the RDC. So they cannot be trusted. They promise even their own supporters they will be different between 2025. You go to the PPP support base and they are complaining just a few PPP insiders are benefiting, and the mass of Indo-Guyanese that would have supported the PPP are not benefiting in a direct way. So what is happening is the mass is coming off. COVID is over. The COVID mask that Jack Deal and company put in front, it's going. So people are seeing exactly who they are and what they are doing.
The mask is coming off indeed. Mr. Norton, in February, during the national budget, you marshaled your members of parliament to support the government's package for cost of living relief. I think to the tune of over $7 billion. Just last week, a reporter put that question to the leader of the opposition. What measures have they rolled out or put in place since that money was appropriated towards that relief package. He said nothing has been done since then. But Irfan Ali is coming on Thursday to talk about the cost of living. What could Irfan Ali tell you that could persuade you that they care about the Guyanese people when this money has been sitting idle for the last few months?
This is not the first time it's sitting idle. The year before, they passed it. And they wait until the end of the year when the prices go up. And
Is
then
that a government clears? Is that
Huh?
a people centered government?
No, not at all. The word people doesn't go together with this government at all. Whenever you talk about this government, you talk about a kleptocracy. You talk about a ruling elite that is all for itself. But let us turn to cost of living. Every budget presentation since I'm leading the opposition 2.5 years ago, we have called for cost of living relief. Not only have we called for it, but we propose measures. I remember Gail Teixeira raising my speech and saying, oh, this had nothing about cost of living, etc. When in fact it had. And let me remind you the things that it had. Apart from saying that we will put resources in the hands of people through cash grant, we made 12 proposals. One, vouchers for Canton minibus operators so that they can access lower gasoline costs. We had said then in my presentation that a lot of children can't get to school, that the cost of living is killing. Therefore, if you develop a proper law-governed system in which minibuses, canters that are transporting food, etc., are given vouchers to get gasoline at a low cost, and you put the controls in place, it will impact the people directly. We also said, two, the waiver of electricity charges for low-income individuals. We propose that you can help the people of Guyana by reducing the charges on electricity or subsidizing it. And this liar one, Jack, they run and say, I say I will remove subsidies. I never said that. We are always for subsidies, but we did say that we have to have a long-term plan to make these institutions viable. In his normal scampish self, he put it over as if we said no to electricity support, but we never did. Three, the waiver of water charges for low-income individuals. We made that clear. They never did it. What they do is try to find something that happened under the APNU, AFC, and skew it in their direction. They're not interested in governing this country. They're interested in cussing out the APNU. We have been proposing measures. We proposed cost of living measures. And the next time I come on your program, I will go through the measures we produce to reduce poverty. But let me continue. We said grants of $10 million or more so farmers can buy equipment to expand production. We argued for expanded production. My argument then was if you have expanded agricultural production, then your costs will go down. I have to read this in tandem with what we said at 12. The development of regional agriculture to reduce the cost of transport in food. We have said to them, Region 8, 9, 1, 10, you have to promote agriculture in these areas so that they become sustainable communities and that the fact of increased agricultural production will help to bring down the cost of food. They paid no attention. They rejected it. Why? Ashley Singh told us, me, Sham, Solomon, and team, when we negotiated for a better deal for Linden, that they cannot support agriculture in Linden because regions 2, 3, 5, and parts of 4, they have a comparative advantage. And I told him that was garbage. Then we proposed grants of 5 million or more to small businesses so that they can expand production. I mentioned that already. Now, 6, equitable distribution of the excess 60 billion. Listen to this. Let me go it over. Remember, there was an increase in prices. And what
Correct.
it showed that we gained an extra 60 billion. And this is what we said. The equitable distribution of the excess $60 billion Guyana received from last year's unexpectedly high oil prices, 300,000 per household. We said then that oil prices went up. Now it means you gain over and above what you planned for. And we said then that if you take that and put some of it into the households, we will impact the cost of living directly and improve the quality of life. The difference between we and the People's Progressive Party is that we intend to improve the quality of life of the people. The People's Progressive Party is intent on putting money in the hands of their family, their friends, and their favorites at the expense of the people of Guyana. So we also said at 7, an immediate 35% increase for all public servants. We said we will do that. This is before the teachers struck for increased wages. We always had the capacity to give them at least 30%. And they come China backdoor deal, giving the teachers next to none. So let me continue. Writing off of UG student loans and fees immediately to free up disposable income to families. University of Ghana should have already been free. Forbes Burnham, whether you like him or not, afforded this country free education from nursery to university without oil resources. Why on earth the People's Progressive Party, with the billions that they are wasting, cannot give our children a high quality education and not just not let them pay quality lecturers from the diaspora so that we can improve the quality of education and improve the human resource capabilities of this country. We also said provide students stipend of no less than 50,000 a month for higher education and technical schools. When I was advisor on youth empowerment, we had done a survey and we saw that children that had the resources to get to the technical institutes got there. Those that had the money to the university got there. But once they were far off and they were poor, they couldn't. We have made a proposal in this last budget. I made the proposal. And we continue as part of our people-centered development strategy to say, I should point out, Lion Jack there, the liar, King Liar, the liar, went and tell people how I said I will get rid of the 40,000 10-day workers. I never said that. I said we will increase it to 50,000. But a significant difference between we and the PPP is that they are doing it for domination and control and don't want those young people to advance. We are going to increase it to 50. We are going to link it to educational and other opportunities so that they can improve themselves and become employable at the full-time level. But Lyric can't help himself. He has to lie. And so he gave a total different version. Now, those were 12 things we identified in that budget speech. The government paid no attention to the relief. In fact, what could Irfan Ali come to say? They were arguing that to take measures to deal with cost of living will carry up the food prices and inflation, will result in inflation. I remember arguing against them, saying that in the history of wages rise in this country, the one under Granger, which is about 70%, and the one with the arbitral award by Armstrong, none of them resulted in high prices and inflation. And how is it you could be a caring government and you can't take measures to deal with inflation? If they had followed us into agriculture and developing the production capability, once you develop your production capability, you create new jobs, you will have a situation in which it will impact positively on prices. But they are not prepared to do that. They are prepared to pay lip service. But even while they are talking about putting money in the hands of poor people and of public servants will result in inflation, they are well prepared to put at least 20% of $606 billion in the hands of their cronies. We have got in Guyana a system based on cronyism. There is no free market. Cronies in charge. Yeah. And when the cronies do their corrupt act, you politicize the police so that the police can protect their cronies. Irfan Ali should not come to parliament to say anything. It cannot be believed. They have shown that they are incompetent and can't implement their own measures. They've shown that they are divisive. They have shown that they do not care about the people of Guyana. We have outlined a people-centered development strategy that will allow us to improve the quality of life of the people of Guyana. And that will be our focus, not listening to Irfan Ali mispronouncing words and saying all kinds of garbage, when in fact they know full well that the very structure of their approach to economic development is to enrich the few at the expense of the people of Guyana.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Leader of the Opposition. It is clear you have a plan and you are ready to hit the ground running on day one. I know you've just come back, as we said at the beginning of the broadcast, and we know you're settling in. You have a full week ahead. We're going to leave it there, and we are going to have you back, perhaps post presentation on Thursday, to walk through some of what is said by Irvin Ali in the National Center. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Sherrod.
Yep. Thank you very much again, Leader of the Opposition. That's going to do it for us. At this end, I lyric. You had we had all of it, folks. Liar. Name it. I was just trying to keep a straight face. Y'all know Jack knew how his story go. King Liar himself. King Liar. Folks, that's gonna do it for us this evening at this end. Share the like before you go. Smash that emoji button, folks. Told you I was a program with a different this evening. Yep. That's our time, folks. That's our program. Stay safe. Stay safe, folks.